In the border town of Venlo, a boiler is being built for a Dutch express designed by Bayer Peacock. The boiler barrel was from rolled steel plate, the seams today being welded rather than riveted. Just as well, really, because that was a very noisy trade. The inner firebox was wide at the top and narrow at the bottom. The firebox was placed between the drivers, making the grate narrow and long. The firebox shell already shows the outline of a Belpaire boiler, as first applied by the Belgian engineer Alfred Belpaire in 1864. In the Görlitz shops, a boiler with a wide firebox is being built. The virtually square grate no longer fits between the drivers. Thread is tapped into holes. On this boiler, the stay bolts will be screwed into the inner firebox and welded onto the outer shell. The stay bolts keep the inner and outer firebox sheets together when the boiler is under pressure. Here they are welded to both sheets. The stay bolts have a telltale hole drilled into them. Should one break, it is easy to trace it by the leaking boiler water. Crown sheet stays are long stay bolts on top of the firebox. They are clearly shown in this sectioned locomotive. Washout plugs are provided for inspection of the stays and boiler cleaning. The grate is located in the bottom of the firebox. From below, fresh air flows between the grate bars into the firebox. A brick arch is placed above the grate. On modern locomotives, this arch is often supported by water tubes or thermic siphons. Ashes falling through the grate are collected in the ash pan, which also contains damper doors. The damper doors may be readily visible from the outside. An empty tube plate. The small holes take the fire tubes and the large one the superheater flues. Some machinery from the steam age could now be worth its weight in gold. Here, a steel plate is pressed into a boiler backhead in one go. The seams of the boiler barrel are riveted. But the tube plate is already welded. The boiler barrel is offered to the firebox. Note the ring-shaped gas burner heating the firebox. Here, flexible stay bolts are fitted. Fire tubes are inserted into the boiler. Sharp or rough edges in the holes are smoothed. Tubes and flues are fixed to the Firebox tube plate with tapered ends because they will be replaced several times. In Meiningen, a flue extension is being forged and rolled. Flues have a larger diameter to accommodate the superheater elements. In the evolution of locomotive boilers, the superheater by Wilhelm Schmidt represents the most important development since the Stephenson era. A superheater was first installed in a Prussian locomotive in 1898. Boilers without superheater only contained the small tubes. Once cooled, the flue extension is welded on. By replacing the flue tip only, flues may be reused several times. The tube plates can be reworked several times as well. Tubes and flues are inserted into the smokebox tube plate. The smokebox has yet to be fitted here, allowing a clear view of the superheater header. In the firebox, a worker with a pole catches the tubes to insert them in the correct holes. They will be welded onto the tube plate on this side. At the smokebox end, the tubes are preheated before being rolled into the tube plate to ensure a steam-tight fit. Steam is tapped from the boiler in the steam dome. From here, a steam pipe leads to the superheater header. The regulator will be fixed onto this steam pipe. The regulator contains the valve with which the driver governs the amount of steam going to the cylinders. The regulator openings face upward, the highest point in the steam dome, to avoid boiler water being dragged along. The regulator is operated by a shaft through the boiler. Here, the regulator gland is fitted on the boiler backhead. When the driver opens the regulator, he first opens a small valve. The steam pressure now releases the main valve, which now opens easily. The smoke box of a sectioned Prussian express locomotive in Berlin provides an insight in the superheater. From the superheater header, the steam flows through the superheater elements in the flues. In each element, the steam makes 4 passes along the flue, the elements having 3 return bends. The steam is transformed into a hot, dry gas of 350 to 400 degrees Celsius, or around 700 degrees Fahrenheit. The return bends are subjected to the abrasive nature of ash and cinders in the hot gases. The return bends are therefore made as reinforced forgings and welded on later. Superheating not only dries the steam, but also gives it a lot more energy. The pressure remains the same. The superheater header is divided in space for saturated steam and a space for superheated steam, from which these 2 connections lead to the cylinders. In Meiningen, they are just about to install the superheater elements into a narrow gauge locomotive. The elements are inserted one by one and then firmly fixed to the superheater header. A steam-tight fit is obtained with ball joints. The steam travels a long way through the elements. Because of that, very large locomotives had the regulator built into the hot side of the superheater header. It made the locomotive respond quicker. Rather than feeding the boiler with an injector, a pump connected to a feedwater heater may be used. In a closed system, cold water from the tender is preheated in a series of small tubes surrounded by exhaust steam in an isolated drum. In the open-type system of feedwater heater, as seen here ahead of the chimney, water from the tender is mixed with exhaust steam. In this heater, a small supply of preheated water is also kept at hand. A small plume of steam escapes from the feedwater heater, even when the locomotive stands still. The heater not only uses exhaust steam from the cylinders, but also from appliances such as the compressor, water pump, and generator. Most steam locomotives were hand-fired, and the coal was not tossed into the firebox just like that. Each shovelful was carefully directed into a corner or the middle. The brighter color indicates a hole in the fire that requires another scoop of coal. The fireman can relax a little more on an oil-fired locomotive. Here, he controls the valve of the burners. Once in a while, the small check hole in the fire door is used to pour in a scoop of sand to clean the boiler tubes. The tender of the oil-fired 01 1100 features an oil bunker. And this is how the tender behind its coal-fired stablemate 01-1075 looks. Very large coal-fired locomotives had a mechanical stoker on board. Here the fireman controls 6 valves, 1 for the stoker motor and 5 to adjust the steam jets which spread the coal across the grate. From the coal bunker, coal was transported by a screw in a tube with double articulation. From the distribution table just below the fire door, the coal was shot into the fire by steam jets. As with oil-fired locomotives, a small check hole enables the fireman to supervise the stoking function. Most locomotives featured a single chimney stack centered over a simple blast pipe. However, the blast pipe was a compromise. Whilst providing draft on the fire, it causes back pressure in the cylinders, which frustrates the locomotive's power output. So the best compromise involves creating the maximum possible draft with minimum back pressure. Many locomotives were equipped or retrofitted with double chimneys. 2 slim chimneys can have better proportions than a single large one. This Czech 475 class also features the double killchap exhaust, a design of the Finn Kilala, which was further developed by André Chapelon in France. Chapelon's last design for the SNCF included a triple chimney with triple killchap exhaust. Dr. Giesel Gieslingen from Austria developed his Giesel ejector with the same goal in mind. This little rack locomotive on the Schneebergbahn shows the typical oblong shape resulting from 7 small exhaust jets arranged in a straight line. For optimum performance, the ejector should be carefully proportioned to the capacity of the boiler.